My name is Dave Pauly, and I'm director of the Missoula Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to Undercover, the show that looks between the covers of books by Missoula area and western Montana authors. This show is jointly produced by the Missoula Public Library and Fact and Fiction Bookstore. And we're real happy tonight to have as our guest David Rockwell, who's the author of a book called Giving Voice to Bear. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Dave. It's nice to be here.
This is a pretty interesting book and kind of different than anything we've done on the show before. I wonder, just as an introduction, I'd like to just say a little bit about the book. It's a compilation of myths, legends, folk tales, natural history. It's kind of hard to pigeonhole this book in one area. It deals a lot with Native American traditions about bear, both black bear and grizzly bears. How did all this come about? Where did you get this interest in bears, and how did the book have its genesis or its beginning?
Okay, well, I've always been interested in bears, and I think my interest in connecting people with bears, and especially Native American traditions with bears, started originally after I heard a poem read by Gary Snyder and heard him talk a little bit about a circumpolar bear tradition, one that's found among Native peoples in North America, Scandinavia, Siberia, and Japan. It's a tradition that all these people have in common. And that sparked my interest, and then I worked with the Salish and Kootenai tribes and was involved a little bit with bear management on the Flathead Reservation, and happened to be called in on a particular incident where a large grizzly bear had been killed, and was involved with that and observed the non-Indian response to the death of this bear, which had been killing sheep, and contrasted that with the Indian response, and Indians were very respectful towards the bear.
Yeah, you described that incident at the beginning of the book.
In the introduction, yeah. And the non-Indians were very disrespectful, and I felt a little bit embarrassed by the way the non-Indian ranchers responded to the bear, and so I decided to do more research into it, and that eventually led to a book.
And it really is obvious from reading the book that quite a bit of research went on before you put this all together. I wanted to talk a little bit about Native American cultures and the whole idea of where the bear fits into myth and legend. And you talked about several things, including initiation rites and hunting and mythology. Why was a bear such an important figure in so many Native American traditions? Now, this isn't just Northwest; it's all over the country. Really, you described you had folk tales from various groups all over. Why were bears so important?
They were important, and in fact, it's difficult to rank animals as saying that this animal was more important to Indian people than any other animal. But the bears show up again and again, not just in the folklore and the oral traditions, but also in the spiritual traditions. And I think there's 3 or 4 reasons for it. The bears are very human-like. For one thing, they have a human-like appearance, and they walk upright at times. Their diet is, they're omnivores like people, and when Indians gather berries or nuts or whatever, they often saw bears doing the same thing, or fishing for salmon. The bears were there with them. So there were those similarities. Also, bears are good mothers, and that's a quality that people admire pretty much universally, and was true among Indian people too. So Indian women identified with bears. And then there was fear. There was a fear of grizzly bears, which was a factor in the West where there were grizzly bears. But I think the most important thing, and the thing that really set bears apart from other animals, was the fact that they hibernate. There are other animals that hibernate, but there's no other animal that's so human-like and so large and that poses a threat to Indian people that hibernated. So it was that mystery of hibernation that really triggered, I think, much of the spiritualism that centers on bears.
And you described in the book a number of different initiation ceremonies. How did hibernation tie into that?
Well, the link there has to do with the pattern of initiation. Initiation involves either the initiation of a youth into an adulthood, or the initiation of a person into shamanism, or into becoming a medicine person of some kind, or initiation into a secret society. And didn't matter what kind of initiation it was, all initiations fit generally the same pattern, which was a symbolic death and a rebirth. And the bear's fall retreat into the den and then emergence in the spring represented to Indian people symbolic death and a rebirth, especially the bear coming out in the spring when the earth itself is being reborn. It was a powerful symbol of renewal and rebirth for Indian people. And so they tied it together with their initiation rites. Was a symbol of initiation.
And also, you talked about, in addition to initiation rites, the hunting, some tribes evidently had a pretty strong taboo against eating bear flesh, and some did not. But regardless, even if it was hunted, there was a lot of ceremony surrounding hunting. You didn't just go out and kill a bear and bring it back.
No.
But could you describe some of the ceremony that you found
Sure.
out here?
There's a complex of traditions centered on bear hunts that are found in the eastern North America, in the eastern subarctic, and the eastern woodlands. And you find these same traditions, like I mentioned earlier, in Scandinavia, Siberia, and Japan. Basically what it involves is the bears are hunted in the spring. They're hunted while they're still in the den. There is a taboo against the use of more sophisticated weapons. So basically the weapons that hunters used were archaic weapons such as clubs, spears, or knives. It was, you couldn't use a bow and arrow, for example, to kill a bear, or a rifle, even though there was a great deal of danger involved in killing a bear at its den.
Yeah, I would guess.
And the bears were called out of the den or prodded in some way, so they would leave the den, and then they were killed when they emerged. Prayers were said, and the bear's spirit was asked for forgiveness, or an apology was made to the bear's spirit. Offerings were made to the slain bear. And then the bear was returned to camp, where it was often dressed in the finest clothes that were available. And people paid their respects to the slain bears. Actually, they were paying their respects to the bear's spirit, which they believed was present all the time. And then the bear was cut up and prepared and served in what was called an eat-all feast, where all of the bear had to be consumed in one sitting in a lodge that was entirely closed. There couldn't be any light entering the lodge. And after the eat-all feast, the bear skull was returned to the forest. Often it was placed in a tree facing a certain direction. And this pattern you find throughout the northern regions of the northern hemisphere, the boreal zone. It's called a circumpolar tradition for that reason.
So anywhere that bear habitat might have been found?
Well, not anywhere, but among a great many of the people that live in that region of the eastern subarctic in North America, the eastern woodlands of North America, and then in Siberia. It was found throughout Siberia, throughout Scandinavia, and among just about all the northern Germanic peoples. And also there was a variant of it found in Japan among the Ainu.
Can that similarity of ritual, hunting ritual, and other rituals regarding bears be just explained by just it was just developed that way separately, or is there some thinking that maybe it goes clear back to, it predates occupation of North America, or what exactly?
Ethnologists who've studied it believe that this particular tradition that we're talking about, the hunt that I just described, has one place of origin, which they place in the Old World in Asia, sometime during the Upper Paleolithic. So it's quite old. And then as people migrated from Asia into North America, or wherever, they carried the tradition with them. And one reason they believe that that's the case is that in association with this bear hunting tradition, you find a number of other traits that these people hold in common. For example, a certain design of snowshoe, a certain pattern of moccasin, conical-shaped dwellings like teepees, certain myths and tales, and a certain belief system about the bear and other animals as well.
Okay. Also, you throughout the book you have quoted, sometimes I think in their entirety, some folk tales about bears that have obviously a very ancient kinds of roots, but most of those, the majority of the book is about Native American legends, folk tales, or whatever. I've been interested to know, first of all, how you gathered all of those and what went into researching and getting those folk tales.
I spent a lot of time in the library. Missoula Public Library I used quite a bit, and the University of Montana Library. I also made trips to other libraries. I visited University of Washington Library and the New York Public Library in my research. And I went through a lot of anthropology journals and a lot of different books dealing with Indian traditions. And I think I compiled altogether about 400 or 500 tales, bear tales, that are unique.
And some of those were from European or traditions?
Yeah, the 400 or 500 are all Native American. Then I have a whole other group of tales that come from Europe, and there's the oral literature from Europe and Asia is just as rich as that in North America.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder if we could talk a little bit about grizzly bears, since you opened the book with a description of the shooting of a grizzly
Mm-hmm.
bear. And what's the difference as far as the hunting tradition and the other things we've mentioned between, say, a Native American tribe's relationship with the grizzly bears and black bears? They're obviously a different animal, have different habits, and what is there some distinct difference?
Yeah, there's some significant differences. You find that black bears were frequently hunted where they occurred, and they were an important food source. They've been referred to as a famine food because if you find a bear in its den in the early winter or even midwinter, you know that bear is there like cached meat for the rest of the winter. And so if you have difficulty in the hunt with caribou or deer or other food animals, you can rely on that bear meat that's in the den there. So black bears were important food source. Grizzlies were hunted much less regularly than black bears, although they were hunted. And the precautions were, people took a lot more precautions, obviously, when they hunted grizzly bears. They were much more careful. And you find instances where tribes were avid black bear hunters, but they avoided hunting grizzlies, such as the Tlingit. Say, if you talk to people even today, they say that the grizzly bears are half human and therefore they don't eat them, although they avidly hunt and pursue black bears. Wherever the two bears are found together, the grizzly always is considered a more spiritually powerful animal and a much more dangerous animal for obvious reasons.
And that theme of being part or half human recurs a number of times, I noticed, in some of the legends that you collect and stories that you collected. Sometimes there's a story about a woman marrying a bear and the offspring being half and half, and there were some other stories about bears that could take human shapes. Is that just because of the similarity of appearance that you mentioned before?
I think so. I think people identified a lot with bears. It was partly similarities in physical appearance, but it was also similarities in diet, for example. And bears were considered fierce warriors. Because obviously if a bear's cornered, it's a fierce animal to deal with, and so warriors identified with the bear for those reasons. And as I said earlier, women identified with the bear because they were considered models of maternal devotion. They're fierce defenders of their young, and the Indian people admired that very much. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, as I was reading the book,
it occurred to me that we have a completely different view of animals from our culture as from Native American culture. And I don't have a quote, but somewhere in there you talked about how Native Americans, most Native American groups, did not consider animals as inferior in some way. In fact, there are many stories where animals that are told where animals actually had the power of speech at one time, and or what is the difference? Why is there this big distinction here?
Between the cultures, the non-Indian
Yeah,
culture
yeah.
and the Indian culture? Well, I think a lot of it stems from the closeness of the cultures to animals. Our non-Indian culture is in many ways much more distant from animals. Indian people depended on wild animals for food, and we no longer do. And so I think we've become much more separated from that that closeness with the animals. And there was a very tenuous balance that existed between, tenuous harmony, I should say, that existed between Indian people and animals. And if you were disrespectful to the animals, if you treated a carcass irreverently, for example, or if you cursed an animal or did something like that, there could be very serious repercussions. Your family could starve. Because the Indian people believed that the animals gave themselves, that they willingly gave of their bodies so that the Indian people could eat. And if you were disrespectful, you broke an agreement that existed between your people and the animals. And once that agreement is violated, then there can be hell to pay for the tribe or the family that violates that. And they did see animals as being spiritually more powerful than people. Often in many Indian cultures, and it's not fair to generalize about all cultures, but in a great many of them, humans were the least powerful of all the beings, and animals, even an insect, had spiritual powers that were greater than those possessed by people. And that's why many Indian people sought guardian spirits from the animal world to give them that spirit power, give them power to use in the hunt or in war or in doctoring, healing the sick or whatever.
So could that have been true, or does it seem to follow that that might have been true about our Paleolithic ancestors sometime in prehistoric Europe? Or?
Oh yes, there's a chapter in the book that deals with European traditions that are exactly analogous to the American Indian bear traditions that I describe. And so these traditions are very much a part of our heritage as much as they are part of the Indian heritage.
Okay. What about we talked a little bit about initiation rites and some other things, but what about shamanism? Often you described in the book a shaman or a healer would look for some kind of a vision that would give them the power of a bear. And you talked about that being pretty important. Why was a bear a powerful spirit for a shaman?
Okay. Couple reasons. Are we talking about shamanism in particular or healing?
There's
healers?
a difference. Maybe,
yeah, there is a difference.
Maybe you need to explain the difference there.
Okay, shamans had a number of functions in society, whereas just a medicine man or medicine woman may just simply be a healer.
Oh, okay.
And the bears were identified with healers because they ate a lot of the medicinal plants that Indian people used. They ate many of the roots that were used as medicinal plants. We think of bears in our culture often as carnivores because they occasionally kill livestock or whatever, and we don't realize that up to 80% of a bear's diet is vegetation. And so they ate most of the plants that the Indian people used in their curing ceremonies. Also, hibernation, again, go back to that death and rebirth symbolism. The bears represented renewal, and so they were an ideal animal to represent the kind of renewal that comes about when one moves from sickness back to health again. And with shamanism, shamans are actually, their vocation is much broader than simply healing. They do mystical journeys to the underworld to rescue spirits that are on their way to the land of the dead, and they divine the future outcome of hunts. They serve a number of functions in the society, and bears were identified with shamans. Again, it has to do with hibernation. What a shaman did is enter a trance often to do their, whatever it was they were doing, healing rituals or to rescue a spirit from the land of the dead. And so when they entered this trance, they went through a kind of a symbolic death. They laid on the floor in an unconscious state, and then they reawoke again. And the bear played a role there because of hibernation as well.
Well, I wonder if I could just ask you a little bit about, is this your first
This is
book?
my first book, yes.
And how long did it take you to get all this together and get the
I think I
writing?
started this book in about '84, and I did a number of other things while I was working on the book, but I spent quite a bit of time on it. I'd say 6 or 7 years of work went into it.
And did you have the experience of having trouble finding a publisher, or did that seem to come naturally, or what?
I did, when I was trying to find an East Coast publisher, I had a great deal of difficulty, but I sent out a query letter to I think 9 or 10 regional presses, and got good response back from that query, and ended up going with one of those regional presses. So I found that it was much easier to interest a regional press than one of the larger East Coast publishing houses.
And what about promoting, I mean, besides being on our show, of course, but are you going to be doing anything else, interviews or anything?
Well, I'll be traveling to Billings to do a reading there and a signing, and I'll do the same in Bozeman, and I may make a trip to Denver and one to Seattle. I hope to do that.
Okay.
But I don't plan a nationwide book tour or anything like that.
But it falls on your shoulders rather than your publisher
That's right.
at this point to
That's right.
take care of that sort of thing. Okay. Well, we have a little bit of time left. I just want to ask you, I sensed, although I don't think you said so, that you feel like we've kind of lost something really important in our culture because we don't have this sort of view of animals that Native American culture. Is that true? Did I sense correctly?
I think so. I think our view of we tend to view animals as commodities or as resources to be utilized, and Indian people didn't view animals at all in that way. And I think that there are things to be learned from looking at these traditions, and I don't advocate going back to somehow going back in time and adopting these Indian rights as our own, but I think a more balanced view of the natural world and animals in particular would be better than looking at them as mere commodities. And,
Okay, well, thanks a lot for being on our show, David.
Dave. Yeah.
David Rockwell is the author. The name of the book is Giving Voice to Bear. As I said, it's real hard to pigeonhole this book, but a compendium of stories and information about bears, especially in their relationship to Native American cultures. So thanks again for being here. I want to take just a minute to do a little bit of promo about the Missoula Public Library. First of all, I'd like to remind people, as I always do, I think, on the show, that we are open 6 days a week now. We still get people calling and asking us if we're open on Mondays, and yes, we are. We're open on Mondays, Monday through Saturday, and we're open 4 nights a week until 9, Monday through Thursday, and Friday and Saturday, 10 until 6. So just so I can reiterate that. Some special events coming up in December that I'd like to tell you about. First of all, we'll be having a party on December 17th, a Christmas type of party, a holiday party. That's for all ages at 7 o'clock in the evening, December 17th. And we anticipate a special surprise visit by someone from the North Pole. I'm not sure who. We also, on the 19th, we're going to be having a special reading by of A Child's Christmas in Wales, the Dylan Thomas poem. And that's, of course, also open to all ages. That's also at 7 o'clock. So 2 special events that week, the 17th and the 19th at 7 o'clock. And you can call us for more information. Our number is 721-2665. Also, I want to give some preliminary information about a special event we have coming up in January. We're going to be holding a workshop for Storytime volunteers. We're hoping to recruit some folks to help us with our preschool story times, and we want to train some people to be involved in this. This will be Thursday, January 9th at 1:30 in the afternoon. Anyone interested in volunteering to do a story time at Missoula Public Library can attend. All we ask is that you pre-register for this. Again, our number is 721-BOOK. If you want more information about that, you should call us at the library and talk to Karen, our children's librarian. In the short time we have left, just want to remind you that the library has a number of special services that sometimes we don't mention or that don't get much publicity. For example, we do have public typewriters that are available to people who don't have a typewriter of their own, want to type something. Sometime after the first of the year, we will have microcomputers available for people who want to write with a word processing program. Can't give you an exact date on that yet, but we will have those, and those will be available to the public. We also, I think need to be pointed out, we also have public meeting rooms which are available. They can be rented. Our large meeting room holds over 100 people, and we charge only $10 for that. Our small meeting room has a capacity of 23, and we charge $5 for that. So we're a bargain as far as finding meeting room space in town. Can't guarantee that we'll have the date open that you want, but you can always call us and find out if a room is available at the library. Finally, I think it should be noted, and I note with a great deal of pride, that we do answer questions over the phone. We have a telephone reference service. So if you have a specific question, you need to know an address of something, or we get just a large variety of questions, and you can't come down to the library for some reason, we can do that over the phone for you. Again, call 721-2665, that's 721-BOOK, and ask for the reference desk. And if it's a question that needs a little extra research or time, the folks at that desk will let you know, and if you give them your number, they'll be glad to call you back when they've tracked down the information for you. So again, thank you, David Rockwell, for being our guest. The name of the book, once again, is Giving Voice to Bear, and you'll be able to find that book very soon at the Missoula Public Library, and I presume a number of local bookstores.
That's right. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thanks a lot.